I do like
Hello,
that.
everyone. Hello, Chris, the
Hi,
fastest
hi,
witch
hi.
of them all. How
I
are
is
you
the
this
fastest
evening?
witch. Feeling Fausty.
Feeling fasty? Maybe take a
I'm feeling
shower?
Fausty. Oh, rude. No, I'm
You're the one
feeling
that's saying
like,
you're the one that insinuating that you're rather feisty.
no, that's not what Fausty means.
Okay.
That's you
Right.
applying
So
Fausty in an incorrect tone.
today we're talking about, and I've got to look at the computer because I've already forgotten, magical protection, the very basics of magical protection. Now, is remember you always need to practice safe hex, right? So we might go a little bit into that. But magical protection and the like, how does that work? Do people get it right? Do they get it wrong most of the time? The basics of magical protection. So taking it from the absolute lowest common denominator, what are we talking about when it comes to magical protection? What is it? Is it condoms? What?
Well, it's a magical condom. I'm not saying you should rely perfectly on magical condoms. You should probably still wear them. Um, but no, we're talking about the basics of magical protection. For me, the basics of magical protection, which sounds silly, but mine always starts with good cleansing. So making sure that the space and yourself that you use when you're working is clean. And I don't mean using Sif or whatever international brands you use. What I'm talking about is making sure that you are regularly cleansing your, for lack of a better word, aura. Um, so actually cleansing and getting to the your energetic bodies. So if you need to first and foremost remember that this isn't the only body that you have. You have many bodies that allow you to move between many levels of, and I don't, yeah, I was going to say I don't mean chakras, but what I'm actually talking about is the energetic bodies that you have. So the other parts of you that fit within this space. One of the first things we do with most of our Patreons over on Patreon is actually getting them to map the soul and your energetic bodies. So we know that you have a proper understanding of what is going on here, um, and behind there, and all the different layers that we're talking about. So what people forget to do is they think, oh, okay, well I've cleaned my space with some smudge sticks, things like that, and I've cleaned myself with soap. We hope, and then think, oh, okay, well everything's clean. I've anti-backed the whole space. Um, no, what we need to be doing is actually adding those energetic layers that clean the spaces you don't necessarily see. Which is easy if you happen to be one of these psychics that does see energy on those levels, in which you can kind of, pop your astral goggles on and look at the other layers of dirt that are there, and kind of go, okay, um, that's where it needs cleaning. That will make the whole process a lot easier if you're capable of seeing that. My What I will go with, because I keep my sight switched off, it's less irritating that way, is to actually, just making sure you're going through the motions. So we're not necessarily talking about making sure you clean every day, and triggering your OCD. What we're saying is that you should be able to sense your other bodies. The more bodies of those you can sense, the easier it will be to keep things clean, because you will feel dirty the same way that you do when you kind of like, oh, okay, I haven't washed my hair for a couple of days. It's starting to feel gunky, or greasy, or whatever word you would use. You know that your hair needs washing, and you don't necessarily base it on smell. you would base it on how it feels. What's different about how it feels, and therefore start to think about, actually, well, how do my energetic bodies feel? For me, I have these moments where it feels like something's crawling, and you look and you're like, there's not a fly there. So for me, a lot of those starts that way. I'm talking about my younger witch days, of where you kind of start off with kind of sensing the other bodies beyond your physical one. I don't know where Liam keeps coming and going. You okay?
I don't know if that's...
You've
Are you
disappeared
there?
again. I can hear you. I just can't see you. Your screen's
You
gone
there?
black.
No. Don't know.
Do you not hear me?
Don't know.
Oh dear. Anyway, we'll keep talking without Liam, because that's what we do. Like Liam says, Faustiest. Do we need him? Probably not. So what was I saying? Is making sure a big part of that is your regular cleanses. So I don't mean necessarily every day, but what I do mean is that when you start to sense that there is energy building up, and that you feel that little bit dirty or whatever, or before you're about to do a big work, or have you need a clean house before guests arrive, if you're having people stay in your house and you practice witchcraft or any kind of psychic art at home, then obviously you need to be considering, oh, he's back. You need to be considering, are you keeping that available, cleansed and clean for other people? So I don't know how much of that you actually heard, Liam, but I was mostly talking about cleaning.
So from what I heard, make sure you clean your space, especially the bits you cannot see. Be aware for smells, and be aware for stuff that when you...
Oh, he's gone again. I don't know what he's doing. He's been having lots of digital problems lately. I blame one of you Fausty Witches, I think. But to kind of go to the next part, what I try to say to people is those should be the big cleanses that are done on a fairly regular basis. But the main trigger for something like that is either you feel particularly dirty, and therefore need to have a deeper cleanse than your normal cleanse, or it's a case you're preparing a space for visitors. So if it's a case of people are coming to visit, or you've got some new clients that you're working with, then obviously those are great times. Oh, we switched cameras. You're going to try something different?
I'm now on the backup because the other one ain't working. So I heard something about you've got to clean your space, especially the space which you cannot see. Be aware for smells. Be aware for when you touch something you don't feel right. So like fold mold, that sort of thing, I guess.
Oh my God, carry on.
And in general, practice safe hex. Did you go on to that? I don't really know. I mean,
I didn't get as far as practice safe hex, but that's kind of the next bit. What I'm kind of trying to say at the moment is that you keep that when you should be doing these. So it should be as regularly as you feel it's necessary, and then obviously a deeper cleanse if you're expecting clients over or friends to stay. The last thing you want to do is, after you've just had a big session with a Ouija board, is to then have your best friend's children over for the weekend and have not cleansed the spaces, and then them not be able to sleep because they're being haunted for the weekend. So you kind of need to be making sure that at the appropriate times you are doing the deep cleanses. My go-to is I'm a lazy witch. So for me, it's a case of I put my cleanses in the times that I will already be cleansing when I'm cleaning my actual body. So I will put cleanses in for my personal space, for cleansing my energetic bodies while I'm cleaning my physical one. So you can tie that into when you're brushing your teeth, combing your hair, and when you're taking a shower or a bath, that you put it into those physical motions, so that almost in a sympathetic magic kind of way, where you're already doing the motion of cleaning something or scrubbing something down, that you're then adding the conscious knowledge of the fact that you're cleaning other energetic bodies at the same time. So for me, I'd because this is what you get with a lot of people, which is, I'm too busy. Have you done that homework? Are you doing the spell that you said you were going to do last week? Oh no, I was busy. Well, cleanses and protections is one of those things that you must always make time for, if you're expecting to be practicing. It goes back to Liam's comment about safe hex, is the fact that at the end of the day, if you are going to practice, you should be staying safe. And the best way to stay safe is to regularly cleanse. That's half, because the fact is, and actually having an understanding of when something is dirty, when a space is dirty, actually being able to sense that is a big part of actually knowing when this is necessary, because you don't need to just do it every day. Obviously for me, my best cleanses are on particular days of the week, that go for my deeper cleanse, based on the fact that I know what energy is available and what energy I tend to spend most of my time working in. So I know when to kind of, add the extra levels for that if it's part of my routine cleanse. But obviously, yeah. So the big part is cleanliness. So is Liam officially with us now?
I know that before a big session and after a session, I always like to clean and cleanse my space.
Yeah. I'm trying not to trigger you. So okay, we've done the cleaning part. How about Liam does the next bit of the chatty about actual protection work? So talking more about warding and protection work.
Okay, so if I go into that, but I do just have something that I'm wondering. Is there such a thing as a magical douche spell
Oh my god.
to, to clean? Is that practical protection? Because we hear a lot about the smudge sticks, the sage smudge sticks, the Palo Santo, and all that kind of thing. But I'm thinking what people might need is a magical douche.
Okay.
Because that gets right up in there, doesn't it?
For those
And I
hard
know
to
that
reach places.
those hard to reach energies, they're a little bit too
Well,
high
my
up to
concern
do.
about that, Liam, is why would you need to? Because you'd only need to clean in those places if you're doing invocation, surely.
I don't know. Some of us don't feel clean unless we've scrubbed every orifice and energetic body. Some people have
Okay.
OCD.
Yes, you do.
So the basics of magical protection, you got to think of things practically. So think about things in the mundane world first. In the mundane world, we think, what is protection for? Well, with protection, you're trying to stop someone or something from interfering with you or interfering with your general shit, right? So when we apply that to the magical world, there are a couple of things that we need to take into account, right? I used to work in a shop, right? And there'd be lots of things on the till system, the computer system, that you couldn't do. It was a security thing, a protection thing for the business. You needed a supervisor or a manager to type in a special code to do it. Now, that is a form of protection that was really fucking annoying and a lot of the time did not work properly. You've got to be thinking practically about your protection. Now, I see a lot of kits and the like that say magical protection this, magical protection that, blah 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 blah. And what they are is they're kind of like what I was joking about earlier, magical douche bomb spells. They're trying to brush everything away. And you've got to think, do you want to get rid of everything? Do you want to get rid of all of the spirits that are around? If you do, is it erect all of these fortresses? If you live in a bank vault, you ain't gonna get a lot of visitors, right? So we need to think a little bit more about protection. And I know that the more that you progress with magic and the more experience you have, the more this kind of thing you're going to be able to tailor it to your specific needs. But in general, the main thing that you need to think of is protection is relevant. People that go and pick up large quantities of money and the like, you see them in their little armored trucks in their suits. They have those armored suits on for a reason, because they're a target. It makes sense, you know, they're doing their job. I don't think these people go to Tesco's or Asda, Sainsbury's or Waitrose in all that get up, because it's not really important. So you need to think from a protection perspective. What's the negative connotations of the sorts of protection that you're using? If you're smudging everything, A, is that even going to work? B, how does it work? And then C, the knock-on effects of that. Because, you know, for every cause, there's an action, whatever. Something like that. Hello, everyone. I see you guys are putting up like hello comments and that. We're not really responding, but hello everyone that's had hello. And hello everyone that has not said hello. So a lot of the time, like with general spell work, things I think go to cookie cutter. So with the cookie cutter kind of stuff, I'm seeing a lot of a copy and paste cookie cutter get out of a thing. Someone on television does it. Someone on social media posts about it, so you copy it. I do understand that to a certain extent, because what I understand is when you look at someone else and you think they know a little bit, you might copy them because they know a little bit, and what works for them might work for you. What you do need to remember, though, is that there's an awful lot of people giving a bad advice on DIY out there, right? And there's a lot of people are giving a bad advice on magic out there as well. And if you're a beginner, you're probably not really going to understand which is good advice and which is bad advice. Now, things such as Palo Santo and those smudge sticks and things like that you see in the New Age, the little Tibetan singing bowls that I don't even, well, they're not really Tibetan, are they? They're not really an actual thing. They're just something that are flogged to tourists. Not really a cultural history there, just some crap that's flogged to tourists and that yoga teachers seem to like. This kind of thing is copy and paste. Because if I say to you, how does that sage smudge stick work? And you're unable to give me an answer, then that kind of shows that you've copy and pasted it. If you are able to give me an answer, and then I say, you know, okay, under this situation, what would you do differently? You know, you've got something a little bit bigger. Maybe you've got, I don't know, some spirit of the Croatia or something, some demon, some bad thing. Yeah, manifests. And you say, what are you going to do if that happens? And they say, I get me rosemary or me sage smudge stick, sorry, or me this or me that, and say, I'm going to do that. It's probably going to laugh in your face and then eat you. So, you know, you've got to kind of think, how do these things work? So what I think, Chris, is if we go through the basics of the cookie cutter stuff and talk about how they're kind of supposed to work first, and then we move on to actual fucking protection magic. Because
sounds good.
The smudge sticks and the ingredients and things like that is very basic, but a lot of people get confused over it because what they think, and you can blame the books for this, you know, fiction and TV programs and that, they think magical ingredient, it just magically works, you know. And there's something that you've got to be very careful, because they say that with the crystals, when, oh, I buy the crystal, yeah, and I put it in my pocket because the crystal book says if I put this in my pocket, my cancer goes. And it's kind of like, yeah, maybe not a great idea.
That's
You also
simple.
see this marketed with supplement companies. You say, oh, if you take this supplement, you'll be all of a sudden much healthier and much better and the like. And you're thinking, well, technically, science says it. But you've got to think, well, technically, if I walk to the end of the street, that will help me lose weight. It will help me lose weight. Will that walk to the end of the street be enough to show any form of weight loss whatsoever? Probably not. Will that supplement that you're taking enough in enough dosage, the right thing, assuming that is even the thing that it says on the thing, on the box, because often it isn't, is that enough to actually make any difference whatsoever? Possibly not. This a magical protection that you're using. Is it enough? A, has it even been fucking switched on? But B, is it enough to actually do what you're trying to do? Now, the idea from my perspective of the old sage smudge stick, excluding the fact that it's been stolen from someone else's culture, with not really much idea of the ins and outs of it. And I'm not saying cultural misappropriation is a bad thing. I'm not saying you can't see someone else and then adapt it and take that and be inspired by other people. But there's one thing to be said for watching an electrician take a light down and then you trying to copy it, not realizing that before he did that, he switched the power off. Because you can see what might happen there, can't you? You think you know what you're seeing, but actually you don't, because there was something else. When he went out the room, yeah, he did something. On a psychic level, on a magical level that you necessarily can't see if you're a beginner or your psychic development isn't quite up to scratch yet. There might be things going on that you don't see. What you might be seeing is get the smudge stick and then go like that, because that's what they all do on the paranormal shows and the like. So what we're talking with that kind of thing with the smudge stick is reinforcing
Be gone, Liam, be gone.
an energy. We're reinforcing an energy, right? So it's a lot like, because at the end of the day it is scent and it is smoke and the like, it's a lot like these air fresheners. So if you go into the science of a lot of the air fresheners, a lot of these air fresheners you buy mask scents. They cover them up, right? Some of them are odor eliminators and kind of get rid of odor, but a lot of them cover them up. So the idea essentially for your sage smudge stick is that sage, of course, may give off a certain energy, but you're filling the room or the area or the space with that specific energy and you're pushing out that energy. So anything that isn't quite comfortable in that energy is going to either decide to vacate or get pushed away. Okay. It's like, okay, the current energy in the room is one that makes this specific spirit really likes it and is manifesting there really, really easily. When you have something like a fishes get on really well in the water. But what happens if I go away and I drain all the water? So if a spirit is in the room and is manifesting really easily, what if I get rid of the energy that that spirit needs to manifest, or the energy that that spirit likes or feeds off of, and replace it with something that the energy is not? Okay. So you've got to kind of think of it visually as, yes, the smoke and the scent and that is dissipating, is going through the room, but it's filling that room up, yeah? So what you've got to be thinking about is, depending on what you're deciding to fill that room up with, is going to depend on the sort of energy that you're using. Now, sage is a go-to because it's stolen, essentially. They think, blah, 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 I will do some magic and I know what I'll do. I'll do this thing because it looks cool. And all those people use sage. I'll use sage. And what I'll do is I'll do that. I'll write a book about it, and then it'll get copy and pasted 100 times by the same publishing company, Llewellyn. And then all of a sudden it becomes a thing. And then someone comes along and thinks, well, all of this is a thing. I'm going to stock this in my witchcraft shop. I'm going to fly it in super cheap, you know, all of that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden everyone's doing it. So you've got to be a little bit careful with what you're doing. You've got to understand the system that you're working, why you're doing it. And then you've also got to think about what it is that you're putting into the air, what it is that you're putting in as that kind of thing. Now, that is protection, really. I think, Chris, is more cleansing, isn't it? So it's not really
Yeah, we're still talking
protection.
about
That's kind of
cleansing.
like, that is getting rid of all of the fat that you shoved and threw down or poured down the drain. If they're clogging up and you can feel that drain, when I pour the washing up bowl out, it's taking a little longer to go in. Maybe it's all of those, like, all that fat that I kept pouring down from all those meals I've been cooking, right? Maybe it's that. So I might do a cleanse. I might send a load of chemicals down and cleanse it out before it becomes a problem. So with the cleansing, a lot of the time you're waiting till after there's something there, after there's a problem, and then re-establishing and pushing out the energy in the form of burning.
Yeah.
Or you're thinking, oh, I need a regular cleanse. Energy's kind of, there's stuff building up. I need that kind of push out. I think
So yeah,
before we move on, we might
so
need
to
a.
break 2 seconds, to break it down, when you are smudging something, you are, like Liam said, filling that space. The way in which smudging works is to smother. So it is to fill the space and push out whatever it is that is in that space. So when you are pushing, when you are moving um, an energy that you do want, the smudge stick, the energy that you want from the smudge stick is being forced into the space. And the idea behind smudging is filling that space to the point that it pushes everything you don't want out of the space. So that's how smudging is designed to work. So when you're forcing an energy in it to push everything out.
Yeah.
So like I said, the danger that you have there is what Liam was getting at, is that what are you pushing out? Are you wanting to push everything out? Because if you're going around waving you smudge stick going, I want it all gone, then don't be surprised when you have a black hole for a few weeks, and where other energies are trying to then fill that space up again. So, you need to understand that that is to push something out. You've still got to fill that space and maintain that space
Yeah.
afterwards. So, are you
Nature
filling it with a different
abhors a
kind of energy?
vacuum.
Yeah, nature abhors a vacuum. So, at that point, you have got an empty space or a space full of smoke, which is why it's really important that when you are smudging, that you have open windows or doors in order to let the smoke out for safety reasons, but also from the fact that that is the visual. This with smudging, that is a type of sympathetic magic. You are forcing it out. Um, which is very different to working with, say, a besom, where you are brushing dirt out. It is a physical motion of pushing energy, bad energy out of a space. Those are two ways of cleansing a space that constantly see in all sorts of paranormal, magicy kind of programs. That is exactly what it's doing. It's about pushing bad out, either by filling the space with something else, smudging, or by forcing the energy out in an outward brushing motion, um, pushing energy out of a space. So, like I said, it's why most people will only smudge, like Liam says, after something bad has happened, or after a certain energy that you don't like is filling up a space. So you don't normally, in normal practice, smudge before, unless you are trying to empty a space ready for, say, a particular kind of practice. So, smudging is not something you would do normally as a kind of routine practice. That is normally a preparation of sacred space. And the reason for that is because you're about to fill that space with a type of energy. Therefore, there is no need for you to consider the problem of vacuums and energy coming in, because you don't routinely clean a space with a smudge stick. That's not what it's designed to do. So, someone that is going to smudge or burn incense every day, all they're doing is emptying a space that is open for anybody to go and move in. But anyway, sorry, next bit.
Well, we'll have to let's elaborate on that and really hammer the point home in the form of what you might see people doing, so it makes a little bit more sense. Because obviously, you're talking about pushing energies and spirits and that out of a space by using smudging, but obviously, you're filling that space with an energy which that spirit gets pushed out by. Okay,
Yeah,
that's why you've got to remember the energy part, right? So evocation or invocation incense is still incense. It's still stuff that's filling a room, but it's filling a room with a specific energy. The difference here is that the smudge stick will be comprised and made of things that's supposed to get rid of specific energies. And the invocation incense is designed to fill the room with things that make it easier for a spirit or certain energies to manifest. Okay, so it's literally, if you want to get rid of the fish, you fill the tank with air. Yeah, if you want the fish to come, you want to fill the tank with water. Hopefully you kind of see the difference there. So if you had some scummy fish about, drain the tank down, smudge it, cleanse it. Then if you want pretty fish, you would fill it with the salt water. So you'd use a specific type of invocation ritual or incense or whatever to attune the tank, the environment, whatever, to that specific type of energy that spirit lives in, its habitat. Fill it with salt water, or the pretty lionfish in. You say, hello, lionfish. Go off and attack my enemy and sting them. And then they go off. And then what you do is you drain the tank down by cleansing again. And then all of a sudden you have to remember you have an empty tank. So what are you doing then when you have the empty tank? Because then it's just waiting for something to happen. From my experience, empty tanks tend to fill with dust.
Yeah.
So that's super basic things. And that's just common things. Now, you don't use sage smudge sticks, do you, Chris? And you don't use Palo Santo or anything like that. You use rosemary smudge sticks, if you even bother to use smudge sticks at all, because we don't tend to use smudge sticks all that much. But you can understand from a teaching perspective to actually have a student use and feel the energy and construct the energy by making a bespoke smudge stick that's designed to fill a room with a bespoke specific energy for what they're wanting to do, that you can see if they make that and then use that visually, you can actually see it, you can feel it energetically in the room, is a brilliant teaching aid, which is why we kind of use them. But remember, you're making specific energy for a specific purpose. So rosemary, you use that for your general light banishings, because most of the time, let's be fair, if you've got a powerful spirit or a powerful practitioner, filling the room with uncomfortable energy or energy that they're not liking is probably not really going to stop them. If I go bedtime, if I go and do a fart in a room, people may leave the room, but they don't have to if they don't want to. Remember that. When you're doing a lot of the smudging, you aren't really forcing it. You're just making the room and then attuning it to a specific energy that makes it uncomfortable for the bad thing that's there. If the bad thing wants to, if it's strong enough, it will stick around, which is why basic protection like smudging and that, when you see people go and try to exorcise people and houses with this, the spirit might say, I tell you what, I'm going to fuck off for lunch and then I'm just going to come straight back. Or it might just decide to kick the ass of whoever's doing it. But there we go. Basics that they don't understand.
I just go, I'll just follow you home instead.
Yeah, that also happens. Hilarious. So yeah, why don't you talk about a specific type of smudge stick that people probably aren't used to, and why you've made rosemary ones and that kind of thing, because it works on a couple of different levels, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, for me, I choose rosemary, particularly because it's something that I work and know and grew up with. So, you know, it's not because all the books by, you know, Scott Cunningham tell you that you can substitute rosemary for anything. It's not, though. It's not that. The whole point of the fact is that this not is not just any rosemary. This is rosemary that's been cultivated in my parents' home for 20 years, that I've personally tended and processed and looked after for those 20 years. So, you know, for me, it's a case of I have a very specific bond with rosemary as a plant. And we won't go into plant allies today, but we could do something about that in the future if people feel that that would be something that they would benefit from. We could do a whole month's worth of herbals. It would take forever, but it is just a case of, you know, yes, rosemary is one of those perfect, you know, one that you'll find in every set of correspondences that says it's for protection. But for me, it works in a very specific kind of way. So, in the same way that they joke around, you know, loosely joke about cats sitting in both in both worlds, and being able to interact with the astral. Rosemary is specifically good at astral, so you know it's good at penetrative work. And by that I mean, you know, it's very good at breaking into someone's mind, opening up to possibilities, all those sorts of things that make rosemary really good. And the main reason for that is it's got camphor oil in, which is part of the woody part that makes that, you know, gets the really good smoke. Why it smells so good, is that varying different plants will have different kind of levels of camphor oil. But it's one of those things where it is, it works on various levels at the same time. So there's a reason it's a personal favorite of mine. I also like how it tastes. Like, you know, there is a big part of when you're going to choose something for protection work, it should be something you enjoy. So I cannot stand the smell of desert sage at all. It's taken me the best part of the last year to even tolerate it living in my garden. I had 3 plants die on me last year because me and sage do not get on. So there is a relationship that is built within the arrangement that I have. And when I ask rosemary to do something like this, you know, it's working on a spiritual and astral level as well as working on a physical one. So, you know, the kind of the sympathetic magic of it pushing that energy out of that space. You know, it is a connection that me and that plant particularly have. So for you, it might, you know, if you happen to be really well bonded with desert sage, I don't see how you would be, unless you grew up in California or somewhere that was desert like. I don't see how you would have that natural connection with that specific kind of plant. So, you know, the main reason we go on and on and on about desert sage is because most of it's acquired illegally, even the stuff that is shipped around the world. So, you know, do be careful because it is one of those native plants that is being cultivated. It has been kind of taken from the wild in such large quantities that it's becoming more and more scarce. And actually, often what is being sold as desert sage is not desert sage. So, you know, there is that kind of, if you've gone and picked it from your garden or somebody else's garden that you know, then there is more chance of you going, okay, well, I know what that is. I know where it came from. And I know it's not being cooked with something else in order to stuff it and fill it up better, or to change the way that it burns, or that it's been stolen from somewhere. So, you know, a big part of it is that. But largely it's because I feel personally, if you are asking an ingredient to protect you, are you going to just ask anything that some book told you to do? So if I said, here you go, here's this cattle prod that Liam made, the question you would be asking is, okay, one, do I need that kind of weapon? 2, do I trust that Liam knows what he's doing in order to manufacture said weapon? And do I trust that even if he does normally manufacture that well, is he going to manufacture it well for you? So,
Has he got evil intentions?
has he got intentions that mean that actually, even though it would work for everybody else, it's not going to work for you? So, particularly when it comes to your protection magics and your cleansings, I think this should be a personal relationship as best as possible with what you are doing. So you're not just picking anything just because a book says or because you've seen it on some Instagram. You are picking something that you know is readily available because you want it to be available all the time. You don't want it to be something that you can't get hold of. And is it something that you enjoy? So for me, like I say, I use it in my cooking. I use it in cleansing. I use it in all sorts of bath salts and things like that. Like I will never get bored of it. And that's a big part of it. Like again, I wouldn't personally use lavender, but that's because I don't particularly like the smell of lavender. It also makes me daisy, dozy and whatever. So you're not going to want something that relaxes you necessarily when you're trying to build a wall. So I think the next part beyond that is kind of the danger with fortresses. I think is another one. So kind of building on that kind of vacuum
Sustainability
part.
issue with the rosemary and the things that you're looking at in books with things that get more popular. If there's not a huge amount of it in to begin with, when it gets more and more popular, it does have a negative impact on the environment. And then obviously going into what you're talking about, but also a problem is with what are you filling that with once you're done? You clear it all the space, you fill it up with the energy you want to get the work done, you cleanse it, then what are you filling it up with? So another thing that hammers Chris's I think methodology for how you create your smudge sticks, you go for very simple things and just use one ingredient normally. But think a bit like this. So the preset energy of the place that you're in, we're assuming it's your home, will be the energy mix of the things that are there. You replace the energy that's in your home. It should be a blend of all the people and things that live there. The cat, the dog, you, your kids, husband, wife, whatever. So if you're creating a thing much like dogs and animals and like mark their territory by urinating, you're not going to do that because your house won't smell nice. But however, if you go around your house and you think, okay, so where are the energy centers here? In my son's room, funnily enough, the predominantly energy in there is my son. In my room, the predominant energy is there is mine and my partner's. In the living room, it seems to be a little bit of a mix of everyone. Outside in the back garden, it seems to mainly be the dog, all that kind of thing. You might not be able to pick that up. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to flood your fortress, house, whatever, with a basic energy that shows everything else that it's yours. So how you might do that in the form of a smudge stick in order to re-establish this is to think, okay, I'm going to be using my things. It needs to be burnable, but I'm going to be using something that is going to be full of our energy. So from the perspective, if you're using a herbal approach, so herbal magic, which you probably will if you're making some sort of smudge stick, you could look at the plants and herbs in your garden and in your kitchen cupboards. If you eat the herbs in your herb garden, the chances are that is in your energy, your field, and therefore will be around you. So what you could do is to take all of those herbs that you and your family eat and that you grow in the garden and to make a smudge stick out of those, because you're using the energy that's already there, that's combined with yours to kind of up the level turn the volume up and push that out to make sure that you're establishing your personal environment. You're marking your territory, because the smudge sticks and that kind of thing are flooding the area with a specific energy. It ain't gonna work against big bad things that come a knocking on the door, because do you know what? They only come knocking on the door to scare you before they smash through the door. Okay, so you're thinking about, yes, it will put a lot of things off, much like those little nets when you go to Scotland are put off by certain essential oils and the like. It's just getting rid of the slight negativity, the stagnation, the stagnant energy that isn't really sentient, but a lot of people confuse it as that. What would we think about? I don't know what they're called, poltergeist activity, that kind of thing. You can get a lot of that stagnant energy that builds up and goes crazy. That kind of thing, or low-level minimum wage workers of the astral world, nitwit spirits that aren't very powerful but quite annoying. That way we'll probably get rid of those sorts of things. But big things and other practitioners is not really going to fix the situation. So you kind of need to think, taking that approach, and you were talking about as well, or you were about to go into, I'm thinking kind of
protection fortresses,
and the physical thing. So something like,
oh dear, what's it gone to get?
Can you guess what I've got? It's a popular one, especially around here.
What's that? The pentagram?
No.
Oh, a horseshoe. Okay.
Horseshoe. Some people have it that way. Some people have it that way. But people will often put them above their doors. They'll put them above the doors because they think if you put a horseshoe above your door, it's some sort of magical protection. It's another copy and paste thing. A lot of people don't know why they do it. They just do it because they see other people doing it, or as a tradition. So you need to think, if you're going to use something like this, or you're going to use another symbol or something. I mean, this is made of iron. So you may be thinking that I'm going to use the properties of iron, I'm going to use the symbology, and I'm going to use something else to make this magic work. But remember, you need to be able to say how the magic works. Okay, you need to remember that kind of thing. We've got a couple of questions. Do you want to do the questions, or do you want to go on for this and then take?
I just want to finish this point, and then we'll go to questions. So the one bit people seem to kind of overlook is they do go straight to this word fortress. So this kind of, my house is my, my home is my castle, that sort of thing. And it's one of those things that needs to kind of make sense to you, which is, lots of people think that, big walls keep things out. So, but what they tend to forget,
like the eggs, don't they? Like eggs.
Oh yeah,
Surround
eggs.
yourself with a ball of egg energy.
So the boundary, they seem to forget that the boundary not only keeps things out, it also stops things, keeps things from getting in. It also stops things from getting out. So this is a thing. So you shouldn't be building an airtight container. Airtight container will mean when the oxygen runs out, you guys die too. And what people forget is, actually, when you're building a grid system, that you need to be considering the fact that there should be a way for energy to flow through. Otherwise, you've always got the issue of cutting yourself off. So there are times when you want to cut yourself off, but they shouldn't be part necessarily of your permanent protections. There should always be a kind of on-off emergency switch that you will need when shit gets bad. But your general protections should be more like the mosquito net. They let air go through, but they catch the bugs on the outside. Then you just have to cleanse them every now and again in order to make sure that there's still that free flow of energy. Because this is what tends to happen, is people build themselves They build themselves these walls, and either the walls are too thick, so they can't get energy freely throwing, or they forget to clean the bugs off. So all those things that are hitting on the outside aren't getting in. Air's still flowing, but they're forgetting to cleanse. And this is why protection and cleansing are two sides of this thing that needs to always be kind of working in tandem all the time. So the reason I bring this up is because lots of people think of, putting walls up, keep everybody safe, or, they start working and they've got families, and they've got small children at home and all that kind of thing. And obviously ways around that is you don't necessarily want people to be bothering you at certain times. So, you start to think about when you want certain types of protection. So, for example, if you've got sensitive children who are kind of coming into their gifts as they're getting older, then you'll need to consider, when do they need to be protected? Well, they don't need to be bothered at school. So you send them with something that is going to protect them while they're at school, so they can focus on their studies. But then, the time you don't really want to protect them, and that's probably going to find this weird for me to say, is night time. And the main reason for that is your dreams are there to process everything that you've learned that day. And they're also your kind of playground for you to play quite safely. So, yes, you have to deal with the outcome, which is normally, might be nightmares or something like that, but you don't want them to be cut off while they sleep. There is nothing worse than locking someone in a vault when they're supposed to be exploring. And I just kind of wanted to add that in because I know kind of lots of parents get all jittery about what they see and what they do and all that kind of thing. And by all means, always allow yourself to have a panic button of some description and go, well, actually, you can wear what you wear at school and it'll stop it. But at the end of the day, they should need to be able to switch that on and off when they want to, not starve them of their development. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, I think protection with the fortress idea, what we need to remember is that it tends to work better if protection's reactive and is activated for a reason. So you'll find that a lot of magical practitioners will have multiple. Oh, I feel like I want to sneeze, but I don't want to. Multiple layers of protection. What people confuse is that they have a super layer, and then they think, I've discovered something new, so I can add an even more super supreme layer, and then I can add an even more bigger one. It's kind of like the idea of, I'll have a concrete wall, and then I'll have a steel wall, and then I'm going to have some sort of a razor wire in front of it all, kind of thing. Not really how protection often works. Protection often works a little bit more smart, intelligent way. So the standard protections that you'll kind of see are relevant. Okay, they're relevant to what you're protecting against. So the standard protection that you'll probably always find that people get confused over can be seen quite easily in things like feng shui, is it? The free flow of energy that Chris was talking about. You're talking about if you've got a stagnant smell in a room, opening the window, or you've burnt the cooking, you open the window, you open the door, and then that flows through. It pushes, it's constant flow. Yeah. So having and stopping things from building up to start with, you want a flow of energy. So sealing the hatches is not really important to happen all of the time. You don't have that all the time. You would have that specifically. Even an old-fashioned fortress or castle, they don't have that it all sealed up all of the time. They can seal it up if they need to, but it's not all sealed up all of the time, right? The drawbridge ain't always up. It's generally down, okay? Yeah. So you've got to think logically about what it is you're trying to protect against and then factor that in. And that will be dependent on what you're working with, what sort of attack you think that you'll be under, But the only thing that generally most practitioners will have is some kind of way to keep all the energy moving so nothing clogs up, and then relevant things that activate when they're needed. So when they're needed in terms of you activate them or some system that gets set up specifically. The only changes to that you might see as permanent methods of protection may be something like this that some people put in. So for example, if you have, and I'll use this as an example because a couple of you will probably be aware of the person I'm thinking about in terms of those utilize this very type of magic. If you know that the neighbor next door pushes out a lot of negative energy, or a lot of energy is basically a dickhead, right? You could use as a form of protection a barrier. You're not necessarily going to make that barrier go all around your house and seal you in. What you're going to do is, if the energy is coming from that direction, flowing through the boundary wall, the garden fence, whatever it is, you're just going to establish a block. When you go on the beach, some people take a wind block with them to stop all of the sand and the wind from coming from a specific direction. Okay. What you don't do is seal yourself into a tent, because if you seal yourself in a tent, you're not really experiencing the beach, are you? So you take the relevant types of protection. That's what you've got to remember. There needs to be a reason for your protection. Okay. And it says a lot about you if you're sealing up all of the hatches constantly, because you need to ask yourself, wait a minute, am I under doing that because I'm scared to death of everything? Am I doing that because I've been told wrong and that's not what I've been told to do? Or am I doing that because I'm under constant attack? If you're under constant attack, then that's the time to stop offending and to start getting rid of the fucking thing that is constantly attacking you. Okay, so you need to wipe that out. Sometimes the great defense is a great offense. So if someone won't let up and keeps attacking you, and it gets to the point where you just deflect it, but then if they keep trying to work around, probably just better to wipe them out at that point. You know, a lot of defense magic that I tend to work anyway is often done because it's some energy or something that's been sent by accident. So there's either some spirit that don't really understand humans or this world and that, so they're trying to manifest and cause inner trouble. They don't understand that, right? But it's causing trouble, so I just say, we'll change the frequency here so you can't get in. Or students and the like that might be doing some sort of work. Maybe they're practicing something, maybe they're practicing something else, or people generally around the vicinity, you know, that has a negative impact, because there's a link there that you might decide, okay, I'm going to block. Then there's some people that, much like a child, if a child comes and throws a tantrum and punches you, you don't knock that child out. You kind of laugh. You kind of think, oh, bless, he's trying to hit me. Because it's just like, ooh, it doesn't really hurt. So when some magical practitioners do that, they may be attempting to hurt you, but generally speaking, I wouldn't retaliate. The general defense that you'd put up to deal with that would be a defense, not an offense. Okay, so some kind of shield work. But again, remember, reactive unless there's a reason, which I think was what you were trying to say with the fortress thing, wasn't it? That's the thing to remember, kids. So we got some comments and stuff.
You're making sure that it is necessary. You know, there are two reasons for it. One is you don't want to suffocate yourself and stop having access to the good energy. The second one is you don't see people getting the trebuchets out for a tent. What they will get the trebuchets out for is, oh, well, that big castle must be guarding something very, very precious. So I'll go and smash through that to go and find out what's inside. So, you know, for me, it's a case of, you know, consider what your options are. Is it necessary? Do my defenses need to be obvious? or do they need to be a little bit more subtle and a bit more smart? But we won't have time to kind of go into the details of that, but just something for you to think about. So where do you want to start with these comments, Liam?
We'll just do a couple of shout outs and that. So Nigel Porter says that I'm watching from the North Pole tonight. Hello to the North Pole.
Say hi to Santa.
Christopher Evans, you say hi, Nigel.
I said hi to Nigel because I'm not rude.
Cherry says, when I meet someone and they are saying blah blah, I listen carefully and take to keep probably 10% because I would rather listen to my guides, but I do believe in the fact we should listen to some carefully because spirit often speak through others to tell me something I need to know. So kind of, I suppose, advice, listening to other people, that kind of thing. I only smudge when it's very necessary too. I find everybody has something that works for them. I don't believe it's a standard stock situation that we all have to follow each other. Each spirit is different, and you have to be able to know what will work in another person's house by going through first and getting a feel for the energy. This is why, obviously, when it comes to teaching, we do bespoke teaching and don't do curriculums. This is one. Witches and herbalists that make potions and the like, they often make it bespoke. You know, it is one of those things that the best thing, whether it's healthcare, whether it's a interior design, or what is always personal to the person. There's going to be a using it in that. It makes sense, logic at the end of the day. So translate that to the magical world as well. KT Veronica says about something very important. My mistake. I said gnats when I talked about the little annoying things in Scotland, and of course it is midges. I don't know how I got that wrong. I've been attacked in it by enough of them. Smudge before or after recharging protection or personal preference. Have to get go charge my phone. Okay.
What Eric was saying there, Liam, actually had a question mark at the end. It was a question. So
should we go on with that then? Smudge before or after recharging protection or personal preference. You need to remember, like I said, obviously, because there was quite a lot of information in that. So rewatch the video. So we went into deep, talk about how smudging actually works. So you've got to think before or after recharging protection. Okay, so what is the protection that you're using? How does smudging work? And you've got to kind of think about that kind of thing. If I have a wall that's designed to deflect energy from the outside and I smudge, then I can push the energy out through that wall, but it can't get back in. If you've got some sort of a protection that is a spirit that lives in that room or in that house and you're smudging and get rid of all of the energy, then you're going to brush that spirit away, aren't you? So it'll depend on the smudge, obviously understanding how smudging works and then understanding your different types of protection magic and how they work. Because remember, it's really important that you remember this. Different types of spells have different methods behind them, so they work differently. Okay, you need to remember that. Defensive magic that works on the perspective of creating a shield is different than the sort of magic that involves creating a natural current that just washes things constantly. Okay, still protection, still offers some protection, but they work differently. So you'd create them differently, and then also they're going to react to things differently. Not everyone can smudge. So spray works or banging a drum. So yeah, this is all things that you've also got to remember when you understand the technique. So if you remember the smudge technique of filling the room or the area with a specific type of energy, yeah, then why do you have to use smoke for that or scent? You could use sound if you're able to transmit and raise and put that specific energy in the form of sound. Perfectly possible to do that, obviously. You could speak the words, let there be light, and then there's light.
Yeah. So the big one is the fact that obviously we've just covered smudging because that's the one that most people ask about.
Popular one.
We're talking just about generally about your cleanses, is actually understanding the process of how that works. So if you are pushing energy out to expel, you are filling that space with something, whether or not that be smoke, sound, spraying salt water, etc. Obviously, salt water works in a slightly different method, which involves absorbing. So I would be a little bit more careful with the salt water one, but that's just because salt is that purification part. So the same way that oust kind of grabs all the molecules, it still puts all those molecules on the floor. They don't just magically disappear. So when you're spraying with something, it is down. So then if it's followed by a sweep out cleanse of some description, then great. Where you're actually clearing that away, just remember that there is the physics part of everything you do in the physical, that balances with what you do in the magical. So but yes, you could use smells. It doesn't necessarily need to be smoke. It could be essential oils, or any of those things. The concept is what's important, is that you understand how that it is emptying that space, and it's about what you put back in that space once you have cleansed something in that method. Which is why we're saying it might not be something you need to do necessarily. Just because you've got a wall of protection, you've gone for the mosquito net variety rather than the fortress. You've got to just figure out, okay, well, how am I cleansing the outside of this space? One thing we didn't talk about, which is another way of addressing that, is, okay, I'm not going to leave that carcass of that dead fly or that mosquito on the outside. What I'm going to do is design a protection that eats those things. Then you don't need to worry about cleansing it as often if it's absorbing that energy and it is powering the protection itself, in which case you're not having to necessarily renew it. It's a self-renewing shell that is absorbing that space. But it really depends on how you work. There's also that thing, what's that other one the new agers like, those
Palo
light
Santo they like
things.
to use. And sandalwood as well is a popular one, I think, now.
Not the ones I
They
was
love
thinking about. I was thinking those pink things. What are those pink things? Himalayan rock
lamp.
salt lamps, that one. Again, they work on a basis of sucking it in to a specific place. So you've still got to cleanse that place that it is sucked into. It's not going to just, there is going to be something that needs to be done with it. But that's how salts work. They are sucking it out in order to purify the space. So how often do you have to dispose of said salt, or how are you having to work with that?
Smudging and cleaning the space is one very tiny part of protection magic. Much like installing a security alarm in your house is one small aspect of security. Security for the house. You may have a guard dog, which will bite anything that comes in the vicinity. You may have a protective spirit that oversees your house or looks after you. Does the same thing. You may have locks on your door, so you may have magical barriers up that protect and physically stop something from coming in. You may have a CCTV that you can look at, so you've got kind of ideas of remote viewing and that kind of a thing. You also have, in forms of protection, you may also have things like a cleaning schedule. And really the cleaning schedule, because it won't, cleaning schedule protects against the bacteria buildup and that sort of thing. That's really what you're talking about. Remember that smudging is not going to stop something coming in. Okay? So barriers and the like will help with that, but at the same time, it needs to be relevant. Barrier that you find a lot in the West Country. What do we have a lot of problems with in the West Country? The Fae. What do the Fae not like? Iron. Why do you think they use a lot of iron in places where they have problems with the Fae? Does that mean that because this is made of iron that it only protects against Fae? No. Does it mean that it's just the iron that does the protection? No. Swiss Army knives are more than just a knife, remember. You can make this do lots of things. Might have lots of different modes and the like. I did a video on this. Cleansings can get super complicated. The more knowledge you have, the more sophisticated and stronger your protection magic's going to be. On average, the approach a lot of people tend to take is to take, okay, what is every energy I'm aware of, and can I make a protective game plan that incorporates that? They come up with the 4-element kind of thing, don't they, Chris? So whether it's the Catholics or whether it's the Wiccans or whether it doesn't really matter, a lot of them will use 4 elements because they think, oh, okay, if I can get every energy that exists in this place and categorize it as 4 different types of energies, if I create a protection ritual that utilizes all of those, I can get rid of anything. Of course, that only helps if you're trying to get rid of things within the system. There are things outside of the system that will not work on. But there we go. This is just the basics. So whether you've got a ritual, for example, splitting the earth, air, fire and water, they might utilize 4 things for that. They might say air, oh, I'll use some incense to represent that. I'll smudge with that and push all of the air type energy out. Get rid of that. I'll cleanse the air first. Then they might say, oh, okay, fire, what can I use for that? Candle. I will light up and I will create magical protection candles and that and have part of my cleansing ceremony ritual. And they think, I'm running a bit behind now. Maybe I'll just combine the water and the ground together. Water's water, ground, what can we call our salt? Let's just mix the salt and the water together because I'm late for work, you know. Mix that together, flick it about, that kind of thing. You're talking about taking those specific energies and pushing them out. Do I use that approach? Yes, I do, but I don't use the elements. What do I use? Well, that's just going to take too long if we do that. But I'm pretty sure I did do a cleansing and protection magic video which deconstructs ritual cleansings and how they work. I think it's in the Witchcraft Live Facebook group. So go ahead and watch that. I think I did deconstruct the idea of using, because the Catholic Church uses incense and light and salt water, which is basically just water and salt, which represents the element of earth, and then the fire. So they all use these kind of 4-element systems. You see it all the time over and over again, but a lot of people don't understand why. So I kind of deconstructed that. Obviously, smudge sticks generally they will use just air. So you're dealing with that. And when you get really into it, the 4 elements are bollocks anyway. It's a bit more complicated than that, but we try to keep it simple by categorizing them in with 4 things if you're a neo-pagan. Anyway, you know.
I like a good purge, but more on that another time. Are there any burning questions before we kind of head off? There's a mention there by Katie Veronica there. Does the shoe have to be seen or can it be behind something? It depends on who it's there for. So, you know, it was a cultural reason for you to see it, for you to actually see that that place was safe. If you're the only person that is lit in that space who would understand why it's there, you don't necessarily need it to be seen. But that's a personal preference there. It really doesn't matter. What matters is what it represents and what it's actually doing. If you don't understand what the horseshoe is there for or how it works, then it's pointless you using it. But you know,
That's what
one
I
of
was
those
going to
things.
say. If you don't understand, you'll be able to answer that question if you understand how it worked. Okay, so if you don't understand, then you need to understand how it works, or you can cheat and experiment. So see what it does with it on show, see what it does when it isn't on show. So you need to think, how does it actually work? Now, I did one of these on the Thoth TV, on our YouTube channel, Thoth TV. I used one of these horse shows to create a magical boundary. Okay, and that one was one of those things that was supposed to just repel things that were in its vicinity, essentially. So it was designed to be put in a room or in a space that had, you know, that area, to protect that area, to push things away from that area. Obviously, I didn't just use that, I used an oil as well to go with it. I will probably, it's somewhere in the Witchcraft Live group, I think, but I will bounce that post to the top again, because there's a couple of people that are asking about really old posts. So in the Witchcraft Live Facebook group, I'm going to reorganize them all and sort out in the guide section at the top. But do we have any more final questions? Because if you want to go into this in more detail, you've really got two choices to make. You either go and try and do your own research and experimentation, because that's really good and you should go and do that. Or if you want the cheat sheets, you can always join the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon, can't they, Chris, to learn
Yeah.
maths.
And that'll give you an opportunity to work with us one-to-one.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just to kind of, you know, fill that space while we're waiting to see if there's any last more questions. Is that kind of, you know, when you're approaching this, who is it designed to keep out? So, from a physical point of view, you're not planning to necessarily keep humans out, so it doesn't need to physically look like a wall. The same with the horseshoe. It's not designed to keep horses out, so it's designed to keep a particular kind of spirit out. Therefore, it actually where it is what's important, not necessarily. Just to give you some hints as to how that works there, but you should go and do your own research. Is where it's kept and how it is kept is designed about its proximity to what it is trying to, you know, how it works to keep it out, not that what shape it is or what it looks like. It just so happened that obviously culturally those things were available. You know, if I remember rightly, there was an important part of it that the horseshoe should obviously be from a particular kind of horse. So it would have actually been used first.
It had
You
to be
can't
a
go,
used horseshoe. This one is a used
yeah,
horseshoe. It's got one of the nails still in,
yeah.
and the crud
So
in the bottom. I don't know if you can see
you
that.
can't go and buy a fresh one from a farrier, and
Well, you
then
could if you designed the spell to work that way, you see, because that's the thing. This is the copy and pasting, isn't it, Chris? This is what people get confused by. Because there are certain things like the smudge stick and or like things that you will see that work on a specific principle. But that doesn't mean that you necessarily have to utilize that magical object or charm or whatever with that magical principle in hide. You can adapt it and you can change it.
yeah.
Obviously, I
Well,
changed
I'm
the
talking from a
horseshoe.
historical point of view.
From a historical point of
Culturally,
view,
they
yeah.
had to be used.
Then you're talking about the procedure and the tradition of going through that
Yeah.
specific.
But yeah,
Using that.
but whatever you use, like Liam said, is the fact that actually you should know how the principle works and why you selected the ingredient, whether or not that be a kicked horseshoe. You know, there is that part for me that I like. I remember there was a certain part of one of the laws anyway, that said it had to be a shoe, you know, that you couldn't, either you could or you shouldn't or could only use shoes that had been kicked off. So it
Right.
weren't ones that were taken off the horse. So I can't remember. I can't remember. It makes more sense that it would be a sturdy one that didn't get lost. But that kind of found item, I quite so. But it's one of those things because there are strange ideas about how you should use something broken when you're referring to the Fae. So maybe you should only use a shoe that didn't work, so that it was kicked off in some way. But yeah, I can't remember. It's not something I use. It was a long time ago. I don't remember.
Hmm. I'm personally never go by the traditions because, again, I'm one of those people that always likes to put my own stamp on it. So I'm always, to a certain extent, I might take inspiration from traditions, but I'm one of those people which would say if you're utilizing traditional magic, i.e., copying and pasting without knowing what you're doing, that isn't magic. That isn't serious magic. That's superstition. You are copying
Yeah,
something that's worked for someone else, hoping that it will work for you. And in the real world, that doesn't work out very well. If I have someone
no,
that I copied their diet because they look healthy, and yet they're on a really, really crazy ass weird diet because they've got something wrong with them, the chances are I'm probably not going to take that. My
yeah,
friend, she's on some very serious pills. I could look at those pills and think, well, they make her better. I've got a headache, I'm going to take those pills. Really, what you're talking about magically is the magical equivalent. Is, oh, that person's doing that thing. Don't really fucking know why they're doing it or what works, but fuck it, I'm just going to copy it. And a lot of the time with magic, you'll get lucky and it simply won't work. However, sometimes
yeah.
you
You
do
can
it
have
and
some
it fucks
interesting
up.
results.
Yeah, yeah. So you've got to be careful. Remember, always do something, or regardless of what type of magic is, whether it's protection magic or what, always do something when you know the principles behind it. If you don't know the principles behind it, remember that's experimentation, experimental magic, and you need to think of the risks associated with that because you are experimenting and fucking about to see what happens. Okay, I'm not saying you can't do that, but you need to be aware that you're doing that and making experiments. And the crazy mad professor should know if they mix two chemicals together to see what happens, an explosion might occur. They can't turn around and say, why did that happen? You know, which a lot of people do. A lot of people are, I mean, we get too many clients that come and say, I did this spell online and it fucked up. I did that online, it fucked up. Or I saw this and it fucked up. You know? Anyway,
Most of them are most of them because they don't tell you how to dispose of magical use. Used
yeah,
magical just
to
yeah,
be fair, yeah, a lot of the copy and pasters, the magic just don't work in the first place, luckily. But there are a lot of ones where, yeah, you get the odd one where it really is an explosion in their face. And then a lot of the time it is that they don't finish the spell or they don't start the spell. A lot of the people that do the copy and pasting, of course, you've seen it, Chris, they do the physical aspects of the spell. They do the stuff that they light the candle, but they don't do the extra stuff, the energetic stuff
yeah,
that the normal mundanes can't see. They just light the fucker and think, yeah, I lit the candle. The magic ain't no working, you know? But there we
yeah.
go. So I think that's it for this week. Obviously, Fausty Witches show with us is brought to you by the Keep On Chatting Network. We do this every week at 8 o'clock, near enough 8 o'clock anyway. And I don't know what next week's one will be, but keep a lookout for us. We will start posting this in the Witchcraft Live group as well. And obviously, if you do want to see past episodes of Fausty Witches, you can look it up on the Keep On Chatting YouTube channel, which you all got to subscribe to, apparently. And you can also look it up on the Keep On Chatting Facebook page. Yeah. So if you want to listen to us ramble about other shit, don't ask me what, because I never remember what we do these things on. subjects and the like, but it's good stuff, you know. And if you also are in the mood for anything in general paranormal related, then also, of course, check out the Keep On Chatting YouTube channel, because there's other shows on there that are of a paranormal nature. Okay, they're not as
They're
good as
not all
this
witchy
one.
like us.
They're not as good as this one because we are the best, you know.
We are,
And
by
I
far.
say that being
Amazing.
completely unbiased, but they're almost as good as us. So worth
Yeah, they do try.
maybe watching. Yeah. Okay. All right. So there we go. Good night, everyone, and goodbye.